Hello, welcome to another tech articles. In this article, which I'm hoping will be a very quick Flowmattic quick tip, I wanted to go over the dynamic returns from this particular post. The reason for that is I've had a few questions. I felt the bubble that I'd recorded below explained how this worked quite well, but obviously it doesn't. So I want to run through it quickly, show you it in practice, and hopefully that really does explain it and explain how that'd be useful. I will start off by saying I have spoken to the tin and the team, and they will be adding some form of methodology to allow you to do this moving forward. But in this example, I needed something right away, so I wrote a function that would allow me to do it and added a step into my workflow. So what I'm going to do first is I'm just going to go head over to a site and talk you through the snippet. And then from there, we will run through how this works in general. So this is the snippet in question, and it's called Flowmattic Dynamic Return, and that's basically because all it does. So what this function is capable of doing is taking individual inputs, lots of individual inputs. There's no limit to the number of individual inputs it can take, and it takes those inputs and basically returns them to you, just like in the photos we've got here. So in my example in this article, I needed to get these 4 items into my workflow on a workflow by workflow basis. So I'm duplicating this workflow many times, and these 4 details change on every duplication. But they're the only 4 details that change, and they might be combined and they might be used in other ways. But I've wanted to find a way that I could inject these into my workflow and have them used. And that is what this snippet does. So when we talk through this, I'm going to use these 4 examples here, and we'll make something up in terms of when we actually run through it as a process. So we submit these details, and then they're available to us within the workflows. So the function here, which is the same function name as here, will accept our individual variables. In this case, there's 4 of them. And when we send that and test that, it will then return those 4 items in a response to us as they have here. And by returning them, they then form part of that workflow, which means that you can build your workflow around this snippet and have that done. Now, as I said, I have spoken to the Flowmattic team, and they have indicated that they would be prepared to add this functionality, which is good because I think it's useful, particularly for repetitive workflows. And this isn't the first time I've needed to come up with a solution for this, but this is possibly the best solution I've made so far. And it's one of the reasons I love Flowmattic, and I think that we can't understate just how useful Flowmattic is, because we can, with a tiny bit of PHP code, we can do something like this. And it is tiny, it's like 5-6 lines in its entirety. So what we're going to do now is we're going to head over to Flowmattic, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new workflow. And I'm going to do a new workflow, and what it's called and what it does is irrelevant, as is the fact that we'll have a webhook here because we're not going to even be using this flow. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a new PHP function here, and I'm actually going to open WP code box if I can get to it here in another tab so that I don't spell the function wrong. And I'm just going to copy that, and I'm going to head over to here, and we're going to choose a PHP function to call. This is the function. Now, as I said, it takes individual parameters, so we want individual variables. Now, as I said, there's no limit to this. So in this example, let's do 2. Do video creator and WordPress plugin. Do that like that. And so we'll put tech articles in here, and we will put Flowmattic in here. And that's it. So now if we go to test this, we've got these in flow now. And that's the important part of this function. I think that's the bit I didn't explain very well in my last video, is now they're in flow. And by that, I mean, if we save and close this, my next function, for example, let's say we're doing an API response, and there is no API to do this to, so I'm just going to make this all up, and we are going to set some parameters, and the value we want is Flowmattic, as in the name of the software we're using. Well, now it's in our flow. Whereas before, we wanted to introduce this as a piece of text, we'd have to manually add it every time we wanted to add the word Flowmattic, which is fine when you're doing 3 or 4 items in your workflow. But when you're using that 20, 30 times and you're duplicating that workflow 20, 30 times, every time you have to do it, it's just, it increases your workload. By doing this, we would never have to, for example, this API response here. So what I've done actually is I've set up a webhook.site testing parameter here. It doesn't require any authentication, and I haven't put a key on it, but I'm going to put plugins used here, plugin used here. And we've got PHP function 2.1 as our response, and I'm going to send that one more time to webhook.site, and we see it's come in. I'm going to save and close it, and you'll see that it's sent the word plugins used as Flowmattic. Now, let's say this is a very large workflow, and we've used that plugins used 50 times, and we now no longer want to use Flowmattic as our example. We actually want to use SEO Press as an example. Now we can do this, test our action. SEO Press comes back. We can now do this, continue through, continue through, continue through. We can test our action. We can go over to webhook.site, and now it's SEO Press. Now, obviously, that is a very short example, but if you're using that in 50, 60 different places, you would have to go through and update SEO Press every place you had used it. Whereas by injecting it into the flow, in this case by using that function, eventually by using the inbuilt functionality within Flowmattic, you are able to introduce your variable into your flow more efficiently. And you could say, why not use a global variable? And there is a good reason to, and there's a good reason not to. In this case, it is not a global variable. It is unique to, and in the case of my article, each workflow was different. They weren't global. So I needed to define each of these for each workflow, not across all workflows. And that's how global variable should work, across all of your workflows. So I could have done workflow 1, global variable, workflow 2, global variable, but that isn't a good use of global variables. And it's the reason why I have been looking for a solution to this, and that's why I came up with this, and I actually think it's a really elegant solution for what it is. And this has allowed me to effectively duplicate the same workflow, and I can talk you through that workflow here, but it's all in this article, and I'll put a link to the article in it. But it allows me to very quickly generate a multi-site demo site for my plugins quite quickly and efficiently. All I have to do is duplicate the Shore. I've put it up here actually. All I have to do to get this to work is 4 steps now, which is it's all in the article, but 4 steps. I have to duplicate the Shore form. I have to attach the Shore form to Flowmattic using response for Shore forms. I have to update my 4 items in my Flowmattic workflow after I've duplicated it. So that's 4 items. And that's it. I can duplicate this workflow and produce any number of these automations just by duplicating it and changing those variables. And I think where this becomes useful is where you're not just doing the examples I've shown here for simplicity, where we are duplicating a single variable, but where you start to combine variables. And that's also written in the same article about how I'm combining the host name that I'm generating with the domain name, and I'm not having to go through and find all of the variables that I've used it in. I just have to change it in one place. If I want this to no longer be SEO Press and I want it to be bricks, it's bricks. It's now bricks. That's it. We'll test it again. And the next time it runs, it becomes bricks. Same as if I send it again, it becomes bricks. And they're in flow. So it means I can change them, I can update them, and it is done. So it's now bricks. So This was a little bit longer than I expected it to be, if I'm honest. Hopefully you found it useful. As I said, I have spoken to the Flowmattic team, and as always, they are really receptive to these sort of ideas. And in the interim, I hope there is some use to this function for you, and you can see the use of it. And hopefully this explains it a little bit better. I will include a link to the article mentioned in the description below, as well as the previous article on the same subject before I improved it. And yeah, thanks for watching. Please do like and subscribe to the channel.